Welcome to Money Convos, where we discuss personal finance and investment tips. We are committed to helping people create wealth and achieve financial freedom. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast. Alright then, let's head into today's conversation.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Money Convos. We are so glad that you make the time to join us every week to listen, learn, and grow financially. And today we have another insightful conversation lined up for you. And it's something many Ghanaians experience. So today we are discussing the key questions to ask when you are looking for a home to rent. And it's a topic that undoubtedly has a lot of people in limbo. A lot of people, although want to rent or are obligated to rent because they don't have anywhere to stay, they don't quite know what to look for. And today we are trying to go back to the basics and discuss some questions that you can ask yourself when looking for a place to rent. And as always, I have Adam here with me to dive into the conversation. Hi Adam, hope you're well.
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm great. Adam, just a bit of clarification. You have a bit of experience in real estate, right?
No, let me say, I'm a construction person, so that is what it is, but
Okay.
not like real estate, as in terms of buying and selling or rental and those kinds of things. But at least, I work with a number of people who are in that area, so that's fine.
Okay. Well, to me, you are my real estate guru, so that will never.
Okay.
So, let's get the ball rolling then. So, a bit of background. We chanced on an article that was discussing some questions that you can ask yourself before renting. And we thought, you know what, why not bring it back into the Ghanaian context? Because renting is sort of a big deal in Ghana. And it's no joke, especially in cities like Accra and Kumasi, and other cities, Tamale, Cape Coast. Every urban area is very difficult to rent in because rent can be quite high. And as a tenant, you often have to pay 1 or 2 years upfront, which has now become the norm. So it's very important to make sure that you are getting good value for your money. And also another part of the conversation would be with the current demand, landlords or agents may pressure you into signing a lease without fully understanding the terms of the contract which you may sign. So it's important that you arm yourself with the right questions to avoid having regrets later on. And that's why we're having this conversation today. So let's dive into the basics. Now, one of the things that you should clarify basically when you are viewing a property, say you are still shopping around, is how much rent is upfront, as we mentioned earlier, and how often do you pay. So many landlords, as has become the custom, require up to 2 years rent upfront. So you need to know what to expect, and you need to clarify this with your potential landlord. Adam, I don't know if you have any thoughts on why it's important to ask about the payment structure before you sign the lease.
Yeah, it's so that you don't have any surprises later on. You know, if you are supposed to pay a certain amount upfront, that also might be what will help you to probably, should I say, hold it down or secure it in the first place. So if you are not certain, maybe, especially here in Ghana, there's advance is a major feature of our rental. So you would pay either most likely 1 year or 2 years advance, even though we know as per the law, they are supposed to take maximum of 6 months, but we know that in practice, what you normally have is 1 year, or in some instances 2 years. I've even heard in some places where people have mentioned 3 years. So you should know the number of years, or let's say months in total you need to pay upfront. And mostly if you make that payment, it might be your commitment to lock down the property. So if you are not aware and you just go ahead and assume, then I don't know, you are working in some kind of unknown, like you just don't know what you are walking into. So it's important to clarify that at the very beginning. Yeah.
That is very clear. So, as mentioned earlier, to prevent having a very huge financial burden, you have to ask these questions to understand, and you never know, some landlords are very flexible, so you asking may even prompt a negotiation, and your payment terms can be made flexible for you. Maybe you could even pay in other installments and all of that. So it's very important that basically you ask about the payment structure of the room or apartment you are looking for. And in terms of the property or the apartment condition, it's very important for you as a viewer considering a building to consider the exterior, like something like the walls and the windows and all of that. And the reason is simple. We live in an area where the sun is very hot. I don't know much about construction, but I know, at least I know the heat can affect the building such that it causes wear and tear, sometimes cracks and all of that. Sometimes not just the heat, because of some of the building materials and all of that. So it's important that you also check the exterior of the building, look for any cracks or leaking parts. Sometimes there could even be a lot of mold somewhere around, which could, ruin your mood when you see it later. So you should check all of these. And of course, if there's anything that you are not happy with, try to discuss with your landlord and see if he or she is willing to make those repairs for you before you move in, or you take care of those repairs. Adam, any thoughts on why the potential tenants should focus on inspecting a property's condition, whether indoors or outdoors?
Oh, I think it goes without saying, if you are going to stay somewhere, aesthetically, it should be pleasing to yourself and also pleasing to the average or the ordinary person, anybody who sees it. We are not looking at sale in terms of like, is it luxurious or something? No, just, is it presentable? Is it a place that you can live? Because those things also give indications about maybe if there might be health implications about some of these places. Like you mentioned that maybe you could have some places where it might be getting moldy or something. All these things are possibly things that could eventually breed some kind of pests or whatever, which could affect your health. So it's important to view the place and know exactly what the place is like, the condition in which the place is. And also a physical examination brings out, for some of us who are within the construction field, when you see certain things, you can be worried as to whether structurally is the building okay. And even to the ordinary person, there are some things that are very obvious. Like if you enter a space and you see some really huge cracks, maybe from the roof all the way to the floor, you can definitely, it will raise some red flags to you, and then you'll be wondering, hey, how is this property? Is it in a condition? Is it something that will cave in? And when you visit the place, a physical examination, you don't even need to be an expert in terms of construction. You can see whether, the roof is leaking, or is there maybe some things falling apart? Do they look like they are falling apart? Sometimes when somebody has moved out of a space before you are now coming in, there are likely some wear and tear that could have taken place. And all these things, when you go, it will be revealed in the inspection. And then when you take note of those things, some things might have to be repaired before you move in. And it's important that if the landlord is going to make those repairs before you come in, you are aware. So that it's not like you enter into the house and you realize that the roof is leaking, and then maybe the landlord will say, well, it was not. So maybe it's your responsibility, or some ceilings are falling apart somewhere. Now it's like it becomes an extra burden on you instead of the landlord. So it's important that you view and see and take note of all these things. If there are some defects that are very simple. Just bring in a carpenter or a plumber and they can sort it out within one day or something. So if all those things have to be done, then the homeowner should be the one to bear all those things before you come in. Else, if you are the one going to bear that cost, then you should be aware ahead of time so that you know and how you are going to factor in those costs in your negotiations. Because in the end, if you are going to pay a certain rental amount, and then in the end also do some kinds of repairs, you should be able to know whether I'm getting a good deal for what I am paying or not. Yeah.
That is well elaborated. So, as a reminder, always inspect for signs of damage on the property. It could be roofing, it could be walls. Another important issue is also the plumbing, especially in Accra and even many urban cities where water is a problem and all of that. It could be that there could be water issues in the house. So try to test the taps and ask about the water flow from, if you would have neighbors, you could ask about them. Ask them about if the area experiences shortages. All of these little things can factor into your decision to go for the property or not. So it's important that you do your physical examination. Be there. If possible, be there to check the property yourself. Sometimes you rely on other people. Oh, go and check for me. Make the payment for me. And then when I come in, I'll move in, But if possible, if you can, go there yourself. Check if the place is suitable for you before you make that decision to go for it. And another issue which you need to clarify with, say, your prospective landlord is the cost of utilities, which can vary significantly depending on the area that you are going to rent and the type of the property. So some landlords include water and electricity in the rent, others do not. Some even include it for your first year or 2 years of renting, and subsequently you don't pay. So it's very important that you ask about this structure, about the utility bills, because utility bills can make or break you. So it's very important that you ask your soon-to-be landlord about how the structure is like with regards to utility bills. Some buildings use 1 meter. For some buildings, everyone has their own meter. Some buildings use postpaid, some buildings use prepaid. you need to understand all of these before you make the decision to go for that property. Adam, do you have any additional thoughts on this? Bills being included in the rent, clarifying that with the landlord and all of that?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very thorny area, and it's a major cause of disputes, especially in shared accommodation, or should I say shared spaces, buildings where there's more than one tenant in the building. If you are not clear about what the structure is, it can always bring up disputes. So you need to be clear, very, very, very clear, like in no ambiguous terms, very, very clear as to what pertains at where you are going to, because you can have a situation where, like you mentioned, there's a common meter for probably 2, 3, 4, or 5 apartments that are sharing it, and you need to understand how the payments are done. Is everybody paying equally? And if everybody is paying the same amount, well, what does it mean for people who are using much more electricity dependent gadgets compared to others? All these questions are there for you to answer, or probe and get an answer for. Because if you are not, if you don't do all of those things, it ends up bringing a lot of disputes later on between the tenants in particular. And where there are certain situations in some parts of Accra, you have the landlord also maybe even being parts of, you can, in some areas or in some properties, the landlord is also part. And we've had situations where people, basically the landlord is living free on the utilities, and the tenants are the ones who share that expense. So you should be very clear and know how it is everybody having their individual meter. And if everyone is having their individual meter, it makes it easier, because what you consume is what you pay for. But where you are sharing, that is where, if you are going to move in, because sometimes you cannot help, but that is the situation you will have. So you may have to just go in for it. But if it is the case, how is the sharing formula like? You have to be very clear on that, so that everybody is on the same page. Then also, in terms of utilities too, another important thing is, if there is already a meter before you are coming into the space, and you must be quite certain, you should ask and you should know whether there are no debts on the, how do they call it, on the meter. Because there are situations where some tenants ramp up debts, and then they're able to some way, somehow move out, and the debt is still on the meter, especially, let's say, water bill or postpaid electricity bill. So you have some debt still on it. In the situation of a prepaid, it will be quite difficult for that to happen. But with the postpaid meters for electricity and water, you could have those debts that have piled up already before you come in. Now, if you don't know about that and you've not requested to see probably the last water bill or electricity bill, so you are sure of how much it was outstanding or whether it's a clean slate, the landlord, if it's an unscrupulous person, can play a fast one on you and say, well, there was no debt on the thing, blah, 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 whatever. And then it comes, and then you have that debt to deal with. So you should be sure that there's no debt on any of the utilities before you move into the space. Yeah, so that nobody will come and spin it on you and say you are the one responsible for incurring that debt. Yeah, so I think these are some of the things you should be looking out for. Normally with internet and other things, we don't normally have too many of those scenarios, because for the average middle level to lower middle income and whatever, starter residences will be going for. They normally don't come with maybe a fiber broadband connection or some kind of internet. So we don't have too much of a challenge in that direction. Yeah. So I think with internet and with electricity and water, these are the main things. Maybe the other thing you should also be interested in is knowing about refuse disposal. What pertains, because it's also part of the utilities, what pertains, if it's a shared apartment. I'm using shared in the sense that, you are not the only one, in the space. If there are other apartments and you all generate refuse, what is the plan for disposing it of? Some places, they charge a service fee to take care of things like that. So if you know that there's a service fee or every month, then you know how much it is. It's supposed to cater for probably refuse within the yard and some other minimal stuff that will go on within the shared or communal space. So you should be aware of how much that is, because that has cost implications for your budget and know what you are preparing for. Yeah.
That is well explained, Adam. Thank you so much for these tips. Just as a follow-up question, would you, in your own opinion, budget differently in a postpaid environment from a prepaid environment? Because for me, I realize that it's easy to budget for the prepaid because you use what you buy. But for the postpaid, I'm quite struggling to think around how you can budget for it for someone who is looking to be financially savvy, I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, I think postpaid, prepaid is just a matter of how will I call it, timing. Generally speaking, we are more aware or more conscious when we are dealing with prepaid, because it has the potential of finishing on you, and then maybe it's in the middle of the night and you don't have the smart meter that you can use your mobile money or your card payments to top up or something like that. So in situations like that, I see that people tend to be more conscious about how they use their electricity. So probably in the prepaid setting, it might seem like, but I think in the end, there might not be too much difference in terms of how much you are spending. There may be some changes, but in the end, certain things, if you have to turn on the light, you still have to turn it on. If you have to iron, you still have to iron. Maybe you'll be more conscious about those little ways. So probably you might end up saving something in that regard. But in terms of budgeting, once you have gone through probably 2 or 3 cycles, you should be able to have an idea of how much you are spending in a month for maybe electricity bills. Or even if it's, as for water in Ghana for now, it's postpaid. So, you should be able to have a general idea that on the average, every month, I will spend, let's say, 200 cedis for electricity, or 100 cedis for water or something. You will have a certain kind of number, based on what your consumption has been like. After some 1, 2, 3 cycles, you have that idea and you are able to work with it. The challenge is that when you are moving to a new place, you don't know, probably if it's the same 2-bedroom house, okay. Yeah, you don't know, and there are issues, and there might be also issues with the wiring system. Maybe there are some leakages in terms of the current is leaking somewhere or something, and maybe that will also be drawing more, what do they call it, units on your meter. So there might be some differences, but you generally have an idea what your consumption is. So if you're moving into a new space, you know that, okay, I spend, let's say, 200 or 300 or 400 cedis on prepaid every month. Or at the end of the month where I used to live, it was postpaid. So every month I receive a bill of, let's say, between 300 and 350. So that should give you an idea when you are planning and you are budgeting, so that you try and work within it.
That is well explained. Thank you so much. So as a reminder, always check that there are no outstanding bills on your electricity meter or your water meter so that you're not surprised. And just like Adam said, also ask about the refuse disposal system that exists in the house or the apartment if it's shared, and the service fee that comes with it. You need all of these items to make a holistic decision about whether you want to rent the apartment or not. And it's very important that you understand the utility system in the area. Just like we said, you can budget either it's a prepaid system or postpaid system. You just need to track your usage. And in an area like Accra where water supply is inconsistent sometimes, you can also ask about the storage systems in the house. If you don't see any, I'm aware sometimes now there's a underground, they can dig and then put the water tanks underground and all of that. So try to ask all these questions about your utility and your water, your refuse disposal, the bills, before you make a decision to sign the lease with your landlord. Also make sure that if something doesn't exist, you ask your landlord whether he or she will cover or you will cover. And in terms of maintenance for some of these things, let's say there's something is fault with a tank, something is fault with a refuse dump, make sure to clarify who takes care of the maintenance. So you need to ask all these questions in relating to your utility bills and it with regards to your utility to make a good decision for yourself. And another critical aspect when it comes to renting in Ghana is your safety. And it's important for you to be aware about the security situation in the area you want to go or the area in which you are looking. So you can try your best to ask about the neighborhood safety from anyone you meet, or you can talk to the current tenants in the house if it's shared, or even the neighbors, Adam, I don't know whether, in your experience, how can people or prospective tenants ensure they are moving into a safe area? Any tips that they can take?
Well, I think one of the first things is to have a general idea about the area. Just you can just do a Google search, maybe theft cases in cantonments, or I don't want to mention some area before some people will say that we are giving them bad, but here on X, always there are some areas that people are always mentioning and all of that, but some areas generally have some notoriety in Ghana for when it comes to issues of security issues. Okay, so once you are moving into that general area, then you must be on the alert to know that there are issues with security there. Then you can then zoom in to have conversations with people. You can even do just random, in Ghana, one of the random people or the people you can get a lot of intelligence from in terms of knowing what is on the ground and everything. Taxi drivers, taxi drivers, you can just go and pick a taxi to some area and then just veer off a conversation, not just a regular conversation and glean a lot of information. You will get issues. You'll be surprised the amount of intelligence info you will get from people like that. Okay. Or the women who sell at the roadside, maybe some random kinky seller or something. You go and you're buying kinky and you try to get some information out, or that woman who has some small convenience shop in the area nearby. You could get some information about what goes on in the area, and that should be able to give you an idea of how safe the area is. And right now, it's a big problem. Security is a big problem, especially if you are going to, for a lot of people, we are not able to afford within the inner city anymore because you know what is going on, the gentrification and the kinds of properties that are springing up. It's out of reach for the ordinary young person who has just completed from school. So you see people moving out to the peri-urban areas where security infrastructure, even the road network and all of those things are not good. So already security issues are top and high up there. So you have to know that if you are moving to a certain kind of area, maybe beyond some time in the night, it might be dangerous for you to be coming unaccompanied or alone or driving alone or something or walking alone. All those things should be in your mind and you should be able to plan and prepare for how, because in some of the situations you can't help it because you getting a property within your budget very close to maybe where your office is might be a problem because the costs are way up there. And even the availability, being able to get it at the time you want, you might not get it. So you might end up settling for certain places that are a bit far off where maybe security might be an issue. So just talk to people in the area, get to know, and then know how to also move around. And then, these area boys too, some of the area boys, they are, some people are afraid of some of the area boys and all of that. But some of the area boys, there are some of them who are like the vigilantes and things. They also have information and they can also be the ones who will be like, if you are very close to them, if any issue happens, if you get to this person, he can definitely get to the bottom of the matter and you find a thief who is responsible for stealing something from your house. So all these are tips you can get around with and know what to do when you are getting to a new area like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is well understood. And also another tip would be to visit the property or the community at different times of the day to see, That way you can get a better sense of how safe the area is, especially at night. And as Adam said, ask around. Don't ignore the intelligence of the taxi drivers, the vendors, the area boys. Just ask them around, strike a conversation, and then talk to them to get a sense of their security, because it could mean life or death for you, So make every effort to make sure that you are moving into an area where you will be safe and your security is guaranteed. And also another critical point before signing your rental agreement is to understand the terms. So it's an issue when there are unclear terms around rent increases and all of that. And so if your rental agreement, some may be by word of mouth, but for those that are paperwork, always try to make sure that your contract spells out how much and when the rent can be raised. So some tenants, say that by word of mouth, that's where the problem comes in. When there are no written agreements and all of that the landlord doesn't inform them of the rent increases and some parts of the rent, even covering utility bills and all of that. So I think one important point is to be wary of landlords who do not provide formal agreements. That is a written contract that protects both you and the landlord themselves. So it's important to ask, even after the contract has been given to you, you could ask the duration the contract is. Sometimes the duration is not spelled out. Ask how long the contract is covered. Could it be renewed? Some landlords prefer long-term tenants. Others also like flexibility because they could have a family member somewhere who has a problem, so he will give you a 2 weeks notice, 1 month notice, or 3 months notice to move out. So you have to make sure the contract you are signing suits your needs and doesn't inconvenience you. So always make sure there's a paper trail or paperwork, and make sure the contract suits your needs before you sign and get all the clarity you need from your landlord. Madam, I don't know whether you have any thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, with regards to the terms, it's always good to have somebody else also read through it for you. I mean, especially people who are more, ideally, if you're entering into a contract, you should have a lawyer read through your contracts. But I know that when I go and mention lawyer right now, people will also be wondering about legal fees. But I'm a professional, so I would definitely advocate for other professionals to get jobs to do their work. But I feel that reviewing a contract for you should not be that out of reach for for most of us. We should be able to include that in the cost of what we are trying to do, because it could end up saving you a lot of problems later on in life. So if you can get a lot of people, because I think tomorrow or the day after, some people will be called to the bar. So look out on the TL. You will see their pictures and their handles all over there, and then know that there are people who you can reach out to. And even now that the free stop galamsey now and the citizens movement is going on, we are seeing the lawyers. So I mean, if you don't know anybody who is a lawyer, when you come on the timeline, you can see the lawyers, and then at least one of them should be able to review your contract for you. I believe they won't charge you that much. So they can at least review your contract for you. And then just so that they help you to be in a good position should anything happen. Okay. And like you're saying, make sure that any terms that you agree on verbally is actually also translated into the written agreement. That's a very important thing, because sometimes people say one thing and then in the document that is produced has something else. And also you could actually have an agreement on something. Maybe in principle, you've agreed on certain things. Maybe they brought you a draft of the agreement, you've made your inputs, and then you've all agreed on what it is. Finally, the one that you sign, make sure that it is exactly what you have agreed on, what you are going to pen your signature on. It's very, very important. Even not just about tenancy, but any other thing. When you have read drafts, the corrections have been made, everything, when the final document is given to you to put your signature on it, you have to ensure that it is exactly what you have read and you accepted to. And that's what you are putting your signature to. It's very, very important, so that tomorrow you wouldn't have any issues springing up, and you'll be surprised that when you turn to the particular provision that you said, oh, they should give you 3 months notice, and you go and you see it is 2 weeks. Then you realize that, oh no, but your signature is on it. So it's very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah, that is well understood. So if understanding the terms is a problem for you, just like Eden mentioned, get a second opinion. If you can afford a professional, do so, and try to put yourself in a very good position to secure yourself, and it will help you in the long run. So let's wrap up with the final checklist for you. So let's say you are now a prospective tenant looking or shopping for a place to rent. Before you sign any lease or any paperwork, make sure that you ask yourself these key questions. How much rent is required upfront, and can I pay in installments? Which bills are included in my rent? Who handles repairs, and will the property be fixed before I move in, if there's something to be fixed? What security measures are in place in the house, and what's the safety situation in the community? How is the water and electricity supply managed? And Eden brought some fantastic points about the refuse disposal system. Could also ask about that. What is the duration of your contract, and can it be renewed? And this is in relation to your paperwork. You need to make sure you understand all the terms in there. And are there clear terms for rent increases? And if they are very vague, make sure you let your landlord spell them out in your contract, such that when increases are due, you are not surprised. And as we mentioned earlier, don't forget to inspect the property thoroughly, especially the exterior. You need to test the water, test anything. Maybe your house comes furnished. Test the appliances as well to make sure they work. And do that before you commit. We know renting can come with its challenges, but with the right guidance and with the right questions, you can arm yourself and protect yourself from unexpected costs and hassles. So that's all we have for you today on Money Convos. And thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your insights. My personal real estate guru, sharing his expertise with us. I don't know whether you have any final words for our audience.
Oh yes. In conclusion, like with everything we have been advocating here, that you should make sure you understand whatever you are going into. It's very, very important. I understand that in our setting here, asking certain questions seems like it comes off wrongly for a lot of people. But I think it's better to ask questions and seek clarification rather than assume and then be taken by surprise later on. So ask many questions. And I know sometimes there's pressure because as you are trying to do your due diligence, somebody is probably holding 2 years advance in hand, ready to pay for the same place. So sometimes it looks like, hey, I must hurry up and just pay the thing and then take the property. But you don't want to just throw your money into something and lock yourself. For example, if you have paid for 2 years, now you've locked yourself in a property you are not satisfied with, you don't like, for the next 2 years, only because you were in a hurry to get it. I understand there's pressure and there's high demand. So it looks more like how will I say, is it like a seller's market or something like that, or more like is the landlords are the kings? But you should just try your best to make all the due diligence processes as much as possible, while regarding the fact that you also need to do it expeditiously, just so that you can be able to secure your property and at the same time have your peace of mind. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Adam, for the insightful tips. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Berkeley, for popping in. I salute you. And for our audience, if you enjoyed today's episode, please follow our account here on X. You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Just search for Money Convos GH. And you can also play back this conversation anytime, any day on your favorite podcast platform. Just search for Money Convos. And if you're looking for that buddy to help you on your savings and investment journey, we have an investment friend for you. So just search for investment_friend on Instagram, follow the page, send them a DM, and you will be on your way to financial freedom. So don't hesitate to contact us here on Money Convos, and also contact Investment Friend. Thank you so much for tuning in once again, and we'll see you next week for another exciting conversation. Bye-bye.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our thoughts. I hope you learned a thing or two and start practicing. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, and Facebook. And subscribe to our YouTube and podcast. Do tell a friend about Money Convos so we all become wealthy together. Talk to you soon. Bye.